All right, so for this game, we have essentially another sequencing setup, nothing especially out of the ordinary in terms of the basic setup itself. So we have 6 positions, which are 1 through 6. The elements themselves happen to be, what do we have? R, S, T, V, W, and Z. And I guess from there we can jump into the rules themselves. So the first rule that we're given is that S has to go either into 3 or 4, and we can kind of reserve, well, not reserve, but kind of leave a reminder here that S will have to go into one of these 2 slots. Next, we are told that W has to go just before Z, so we end up with sort of this WZ kind of block. And the only other rule that we have is that R cannot be next to V. So I guess we can say R and V simply are not going to go next to each other, and that goes in both directions, right? So we can't have VR, nor can we have RV. Now, it might be worth considering exhausting the game because, I mean, S only has 2 major possibilities, but it doesn't seem like it would do that much because if you put S into 3, then it seems like W and Z still has a little bit of flexibility, right? Because you could put it into 1, 2, 4, 5, 5, 6. And if you put S into 4, same thing. It looks like we still have quite a bit of flexibility. So this probably isn't worth exhausting. But if you did, though, remember, no harm done. If it seems like it might be worthwhile, just go for it and see where it takes you. From there, though, let's take a look at the questions themselves. So the first question that we're given here is our exclusion question, as usual. And I guess let's go by the rules. So the first rule told us that S has to go either 3 or 4. So it looks like answer choice A looks good, B looks okay as well. C, no, we have T, R, W, Z, and then S. S certainly can't go 5th, so we can disqualify answer choice C from our answers. Next, and then otherwise D actually still looks good, and E looks good as well. Next, W, Z in that order. So answer choice A looks like it violates that one. We have the V in between them, so that doesn't work. Answer choice B looks okay. C we've already disqualified. D looks fine, and E looks fine as well. Next, R and V can't be consecutive. Answer choice B has them consecutively, so that doesn't work. Next, answer choice D has them separated, so we're good. And answer choice E looks like they are next to each other, so that also doesn't work. So the best answer that we're left with here is answer choice D for number 12. Next, from there, let's take a look at the local questions first. So the first local question that we're given here is number 13, which says, if the tunnel is the first obstacle, then what has to happen? Well, let's play this out. If we have the tunnel in the first position, I guess the question then becomes, what does that mean? What does that effectively do for us? Well, I guess one of the other major restricting components of the game is that WZ block. So I guess let's kind of go down that path first. So where could we place the WZ block right now? I mean, if we were to place it into 2 and 3, that would force S to go 4, but then R and V would be next to each other, so that doesn't seem like it would work. We certainly can't do WZ into 3 and 4 respectively, because then there's no room for the S. Could we do 4 and 5? Well, actually, maybe. If we did WZ in 4 and 5, then S would have to go 3rd, and then R and V would split between 2 and 6, which is legit. Or we can do W and Z in 5 and 6, in which case I guess we can split R and V between 2 and 4, and then S can go 3rd, so that actually works as well. So it looks like we only have 2 major plays here in terms of what will happen with the W and Z. So you know what, let's just kind of play out both just so that we have it on the board. So either we're going to have WZ in 4, 5, or we're going to have WZ in 5, 6. Now, in the top scenario, as we said, S is going to have to go 3rd, and then R and V are going to basically split the last 2 positions. In the second scenario, R and V can't be next to each other, so they're still going to split 2 and 4 in this case, and then S actually ends up still going 3rd. Actually, we could have probably done this another way as well, a slightly perhaps cleaner approach. The thing is, if T was first, we actually could have drawn the deduction that it would have been impossible to place the S into the 4th position, because if the S was to go 4th, then we essentially would have ended up with 2 spaces on one side and 2 spaces on the other side. One of those 2 would have been the WZ block, and then the other one would have been stuck as R and V, and that wouldn't have worked. So we actually could have made a deduction up front if we focused on the S rather than the WZ block, which is actually reasonable because S is also restricted, that S wouldn't have been able to go fourth. Either way though, sometimes you end up taking the slightly less efficient approach, and you still end up with a reasonably efficient solution. So the question here asks, which of the following must be true? A, rope bridge is second. Well, this is arguably still split between R and V. In fact, there's no real way to distinguish between R and V, so it's almost impossible to say that R has to go second as opposed to V. Next, R is fourth. Well, again, we don't have to have R in fourth. In fact, we could, in either scenario, either have W here or the V. Next, S is third, and that's definitely true in both scenarios. So the best answer to question number 13 then becomes answer choice C. Next, number 14. So this one's a global question. We'll come back to that one in a second. Just let's get through the locals first. So number 15 says, if the rope bridge is in the second position, well, let's play this out. If R happens to be in the second position, I guess the question becomes, what does that mean for us? Well, first of all, we definitely know that we're not going to be allowed to have a V anywhere next to that R. Now, I guess that does kind of raise the questions of what could go next to the R. In fact, the first slot kind of becomes especially restricted now, because that kind of raises the question of who could actually go first right now. Because if we look at our elements, we know that there's no way to have, of these 6, there's no way to have a W or a Z in the first position right now, because they have to be a block and there's no space for that. S has to kind of go third or fourth, but certainly not first. And we just disqualified V because he certainly can't go next to R. Obviously, R can't go next to himself, which means really the only person who could go in that first position is actually at the moment going to be T. So that's kind of a decent place for us to start right now. Now, beyond that, I guess what else could we do? Well, let's talk about S, since we kind of only have 2 possibilities for that S. Could we place S into either 3 or 4? Well, if we place S into 3, then yeah, we could have WZ kind of moving around. And if we place S into 4, then WZ could still go into 5. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's not going to work. If we place S into the 4th position right now, that would force the WZ into 5 and 6, in which case the V would be stuck in 3, and that actually doesn't work, which means that S currently can't go 4th. S would have to go into position 3. And that now leaves us with essentially the WZ block, who is going to go either into 4, 5, or 5, 6, and then the V, which is going to round out kind of the last spot. So the question itself now asks for number 15, what must be true? S is 4th. In fact, that actually can't happen at the moment, so A is definitely out. B, T is first, and yes, we do definitely know that T is first. We actually could have answered this question a while ago. So the best answer to question number 15 is B. Next, number 16. If the rope bridge and the vaulting apparatus are both earlier than the tunnel. So for this scenario, R and V are both going to go next, or sorry, not next to, but rather before T. So I guess one major question that you should be asking yourself now is, if both R and V are before T, arguably that restricts T. So where could the T go? Well, the earliest, at least in theory, it could go would be 3rd, so that we have room for R and V before it, except if we put T in 3rd, that's not going to work because R and V can't be next to each other. So 3 is out of the question. Could we place the T into the 4th position? Well, if we place the T into the 4th position, then S gets stuck in 3rd, and R and V are still next to each other, so that's not going to work either. Could we place the T in the 5th position? Well, the thing is, if T is in 5th, we're going to have to fit quite a few people before it, aren't we? Because if T is in 5, W and Z can't fit in 6. So W and Z are going to have to go somewhere back here. We're going to have both R and V back here, and S. That's actually everybody else, which means if T is in 5, we can't fit everyone else before it, but we would have to, which means T couldn't go 5th. Really, at the moment, the only place T could go is into the 6th position. So from here, I guess let's see what else we can do. The W and Z seems like it could move around a little bit right now, so let's leave that one be. The S, as usual, only has 2 possibilities, except we kind of run into a similar issue as we had early on for question number 13, which is that if we place S into 3, you'll notice that what would happen is it would split the board into 2, right? We would have to have WZ on one side or the other side, but then you would end up with R and V in the last 2 remaining slots. So we can't put S into 3 right now. That means that S would have to go into the 4th position. And from here, we have a little bit of flexibility. We could either run the WZ into 1 and 2, and then R and V would split 3, 5, or we can place the WZ into 2 and 3, and then R and V would split 1, 5. It is worth noting, though, that R or V will have to go into that fifth position, and then the rest of it kind of will shuffle. So the question itself now asks, which of the following must be true? Answer choice A, spinning is fourth. Well, actually, spinning does in fact have to be fourth. So the best answer to question number 16 is answer choice A. Just in case, though, if you're suspicious, we can always take a look at the other ones. T5, well, no, that certainly at the moment does. In fact, it can't be true because we know that T is in 6. V is 5. Well, it could, but it doesn't have to. Wall is first. I mean, again, it could, but the W could go second with the Z in third. And then Z is third. Again, no, we could have Z in 3, but we could also have Z in 2 with W in 1. So the best answer to question number 16 is A. Lastly, question number 14. Which of the following is a complete and accurate list of the positions in which the tunnel could be placed? Well, we have a little bit of history that we can use. Unfortunately, it's not too variable, but we definitely have seen T in the first position, and we've seen T in the sixth position. So if we're looking for a complete list of where T could have gone, we know that that list would need to include both positions 1 and 6. Now, all the answer choices have 1, but it's worth noting answer choice A does not have the sixth position, so we can get rid of answer choice A. Now, from there, we're going to have to do a little bit more work. Now, it's worth noting all of the answer choices have the second position there, so we don't really need to bother testing it because we know that T, no matter what, it's going to be part of the answers. And then the next kind of variable component would be the third position, because answer choices C, D, and E have the third position as part of the list. Answer choice B doesn't. So I guess the next question becomes, could the T go third? Now, this one's actually pretty easy to test, because if we put the T into the third position, that would force us to put into the S into the fourth position. And if we do that, you'll notice that this doesn't work. We run into a very similar issue, which is that now we're going to have W and Z either in 5, 6 or in 1, 2. But then whichever one it is, R and V are going to end up stuck together on the other side, which can't happen, which means that T certainly cannot go into the third position, which gets rid of answer choices C, D, and E, and leaves us with the only viable answer choice here as answer choice B for number 14.